I do think that those three dudes, I think Luther Burden is the best wide receiver in college football. I think this time next year, we're going to be talking about him as being the number one wide receiver in next year's NFL draft. I think the kid can do it all. I think he can catch, run after catch. I think he can high point. He can separate from DBs. He's physical and blocking when it comes up to getting to that second level and the safeties. I think the kid can do it all. The question is will he have that breakout year that everybody's expecting? The reason I say that is because a lot of those offensive pieces for Missouri returns. And when you have a lot of offensive line, when you have a quarterback going into another year, when you have multiple wide receivers that are – oh, you're back from the transfer portal? Just to finish my point, I think if you're looking at the top wide receiver in college football, it's got to be Luther Burden. Joe, do you want to get to your top five wide receivers?
Yes.
Okay. Here are your top five here. Go ahead and read them off, my man.
So you already mentioned the de facto number one, Luther Burden from Missouri. Number two, Teteroa McMillan from Arizona for me. Number three, Tiz Johnson from Oregon. Number four, Emeka Ibuka at Ohio State. And then number five, Deion Burks from Oklahoma.
See, it's interesting because, well, before I get to all this, do you want to get to Luther Burden since you did not have the chance?
Sure. Just to contribute to what you probably already said about Burden, I think that he is justifiably the number one guy coming into next year because his impact was so noticeable. I don't think there's another guy on this list who carried their offensive production the way that he did. I don't think there's another guy in the country at receiver that we can talk about right now that was maybe not every single game because there were a couple games that he wasn't great, but a guy who seriously lifted their team's offense. I don't think there's another guy that can fit into that conversation.
I'm not going to say that there's not a guy that doesn't fit into that conversation. And I do want to say this. The only thing I'll say about Luther Burden, Joe, there were some big games he didn't show up in. Right? And I do think that this wide receiver core going into this year, Joe, we don't have the Malik Neighbors, in my opinion. We don't have the Marvin Harrison. Okay? I don't even know who's going to be the Brian Thomas who emerges out of nowhere that people weren't talking about. I actually think we're going to talk about one of them. But the bottom line is, even though we put Luther Burden at one, if I'm going to be very nitpicky, and I think it's fair to be nitpicky when you put somebody at one overall, for me, I think that he's going to have to show this year that he can step up in big games. Because I do think Brady Cook is going to be better. I think this offense is going to be better. And I do think that when you are the number one guy and you got a lot of receivers returning, you better – it's like the old saying, Joe, if you want to beat the man, you got to beat – or you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. Well, you're going to have to show that you can beat those first-round corners and first-round DBs at Georgia. And that's just the bottom line. So that would be the only nitpicky thing that I'd say about Luther Burden.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.